We live in a world where voices and images.
This is very valuable to us. And we
Pause for a second, because what unfolded inside that courtroom stunned everyone in the room. A nationally known morning show anchor, an 84-year-old mother, a kidnapping investigators once claimed was firmly contained, and now relatives standing before a judge, their voices trembling as shocking revelations burst into the open. Let me ask you this. If the case was truly just about ransom, why did previously sealed evidence suddenly ignite such a fierce battle inside that courtroom?
The light is missing from our lives. Nancy is our mother. We are her children.
Why were quiet murmurs spreading about discoveries the public had never been told about? And why did one legal analyst, barely above a whisper, reportedly say, "This changes everything," just as cameras were hurriedly pushed out of the hallway? What began as a heartbreaking family ordeal is now spiraling into something far larger, a public drama unfolding in real time. Because when Savannah Guthrie, the composed, trusted face of NBC's Today Show, walks away from the bright studio lights and into a tense courthouse corridor, you know the story has taken a dramatic turn. Suddenly, the mystery isn't simply, where is Nancy Guthrie? The real question echoing through the room is far more unsettling. What aren't they telling us? Stay with me, because the revelations surfacing today don't just complicate the investigation, they pour gasoline on it.
She is our beacon. She holds fast to joy in all of life's circumstances.
The instant those courtroom doors shut, the entire energy of this case changed. This wasn't a quiet, routine hearing with a grieving family sitting silently through legal formalities. The tension was thick enough to feel even through a screen. Savannah Guthrie stepped inside looking composed, the same poised presence viewers recognize from television, posture steady, expression controlled. But according to people in the room, the atmosphere surrounding her was anything but calm. Just 2 seats away, her sister sat rigid, staring straight ahead, jaw clenched as if holding back something unsaid. And hanging over everything, the name whispered again and again in uneasy tones. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, and suddenly gone.
We received your message, and we understand.
And just like that, the story no longer felt like a simple tragedy. It felt like the eye of a legal storm that might not be accidental at all. Until this moment, the storyline had been straightforward. A puzzling disappearance, a possible ransom message, a devastated family pleading for help while federal investigators reassured the public they were chasing every possible lead. But behind those courtroom doors, the language began to shift. Suddenly people were hearing terms that carried a very different weight. Procedural irregularities, questions about how evidence had been handled, and unsettling references to discoveries tied to property connections.
We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her.
Let that sink in for a moment, because the instant legal teams began referencing items recovered from land tied to Savannah's sister's residence. Witnesses say the entire room went still. No accusations were made. No charges were announced. But in a case this high profile, even a simple reference carries weight. Observers say attorneys began dissecting how physical evidence from the first search operation had been handled, protective gloves, sealed bags of collected materials, even discarded household items. Everything had been gathered, labeled, and transferred into federal custody for examination. But then came the moment that made reporters shift forward in their seats. One attorney raised a pointed question. Did the official timeline of when that evidence was logged truly match the timeline described in the public statements released earlier?
This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
Exactly. Those are not casual expressions. They are the kind of words that only appear when something serious is being examined under a microscope. And the moment the phrase clarification of sequence was spoken, the tension in the room intensified. Because in investigations like this, the sequence of events isn't a minor detail, it's everything. When something was discovered, who made the discovery, and who had their hands on it afterward.
I wanted to come on, and it's been 2 weeks since our mom was taken, and
when it was officially logged into the registry. In cases like this, every single minute carries weight. Outside the courthouse, cameras crowded the steps as legal analysts rushed forward, desperate to interpret what had just happened. Is the family now under suspicion? One reporter yelled above the noise. There were no direct allegations announced, but anyone who understands public perception knows this much. When answers go quiet, speculation fills the silence. Within minutes, social media detonated. Short clips of Savannah adjusting her microphone were replayed endlessly, studied frame by frame, as if they were pieces of forensic evidence.
I wanted to come on and say that we still have hope. And we still believe.
Savannah's sister's expression suddenly became its own headline. Every blink, every inhale, every subtle shift in her face was pulled apart online. And then came the moment that sent the tension soaring. Inside the courtroom, there was a quiet but unmistakable reference to communications. Not the ransom message the public had already heard about, but a different exchange entirely. Another message, one that, according to the discussion, had been sealed and placed under review.
Say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's never too late. And
when someone pressed further, asking whether that communication confirmed any proof of life, legal counsel gave a single response: no comment. In a case that had unfolded through emotional appeals and carefully managed public transparency, that quiet refusal landed with far more impact than any dramatic statement ever could. Why keep that information hidden now? Why reveal new layers inside a courtroom instead of during official press briefings? And why did an FBI representative slip out through a private corridor rather than facing the media the way they had during earlier updates? These aren't accusations.
You're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing. And we are here.
And just when it seemed the tension inside that courtroom had reached its breaking point, something else began to happen. The leaks started. Not formal statements, not carefully polished press releases. Leaks. Anonymous sources hinting that what unfolded behind closed doors may have revealed only a fraction of what investigators are truly examining, according to one insider. And yes, we're choosing that word carefully. Financial records linked to properties associated with the family are now being quietly reviewed. No charges have been filed. No accusations have been made. But the phrase that keeps surfacing is irregular activity. And that's the kind of wording that may sound routine until you realize it almost never is. Large withdrawals, sudden transfers, payments for private security, consulting fees that reportedly surged in the weeks leading up to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. A coincidence? Maybe.
What do they got? You got a bag. Yeah, gloves in the bag.
But in investigations like this, timing is everything. And that's where the story takes an even more unsettling turn. Sources say that while evidence was being processed, investigators quietly widened their digital sweep. Not just pulling standard tower data from AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, but conducting something far more precise: device proximity mapping. In simple terms, they weren't only tracking who called whom. They were mapping which devices were physically near certain properties at specific moments. And that's when something unusual surfaced. An unidentified device reportedly pinged multiple times near Savannah's sister's garden in the days before the first search ever began. No registered owner. A prepaid phone. Then suddenly silent. On its own. That would already raise serious questions. But here's the twist. That same device allegedly came back online for a brief moment just hours after the courtroom hearing ended. So ask yourself, coincidence, or is someone out there watching this entire case unfold in real time?
Gotta go left. Came out with some bags. They looked like food bags.
Social media erupted the moment pieces of that information began spreading. Hashtags surged across every platform. Self-appointed investigators dug up archived satellite images. Comment sections transformed into full-blown strategy rooms. Some people rushed to defend the family with absolute loyalty, while others began asking the question no one seemed comfortable saying out loud: why does every new detail make this story even more complicated? Then another spark hit the fire. An alleged internal memo. Unverified, of course, but shared thousands of times within hours. According to those posts, the document mentioned an ongoing assessment of narrative consistency. And that phrase raised eyebrows immediately, because that's not typical wording for a missing person investigation. That's the kind of language you hear in crisis management. Meanwhile, viewers have noticed something different about Savannah's public appearances. Her segments on NBC's Today Show suddenly feel sharper, quicker, almost compressed.
They found DNA in the home area. They wouldn't say where it was, but obviously they believe it's suspicious.
Even more tightly managed. Observers noticed she carefully avoided mentioning the latest courtroom revelations, not even a brief acknowledgement. And in the world of media optics, silence can speak louder than any statement. The FBI has not confirmed these circulating reports, but they also haven't denied the possibility of an expanded financial review. And when federal agencies remain quiet while speculation spreads, it rarely cools public curiosity. It only intensifies it. So now the situation stands like this. a courtroom filled with unresolved procedural questions, a mysterious device that briefly came back online, financial movements labeled irregular, and a family now caught in a storm that refuses to calm. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie was supposed to be the story everyone followed. But the deeper this investigation goes, the more it begins to feel like that headline was only the beginning.
And then this DNA on the glove, you heard me talk about it from Marnie. 2 parts about this. When are we going to find out results?
And just when the public believed this story had already taken every possible turn, the pressure began shifting from quiet whispers to something far more serious: consequences. Because in investigations that attract this level of attention, silence never lasts forever. Behind the scenes, legal analysts have started discussing the possibility of a formal review panel. Not an arrest, not an indictment, but a review. And in high-level legal circles, that single word carries enormous weight. Sources familiar with regulatory offices say that if more inconsistencies continue appearing, a wider inquiry could be triggered. One that looks not only at the disappearance itself, but also at how information surrounding the case was publicly handled. Handled is the critical word here, because when timelines start to blur and certain communications remain sealed, oversight bodies inevitably begin asking difficult questions. Was every detail disclosed in the correct sequence? Were updates held back longer than they should have been? And perhaps the most sensitive question of all, who is controlling the narrative? Meanwhile, companies that sponsor the NBC Today show are reportedly watching developments closely.
This is a hot case, and back in my lab, we could have done this probably in about 4 hours.
That's corporate shorthand for one thing. We're paying very close attention. Advertising partnerships in the media world are delicate arrangements. They survive on stability, reputation, and public trust. And the moment controversy begins trending alongside one of a network's most recognizable faces, Savannah Guthrie, executives don't simply shrug it off. They evaluate the risk, quietly, behind sealed boardroom doors. According to insiders, those risk assessment conversations may already be happening, strategic, careful, and calculated. Because if public perception shifts even slightly from sympathy to suspicion, the entire equation changes overnight. Then there's the financial dimension. Remember those irregular movements sources hinted at earlier? Analysts combing through public property filings say they've noticed something subtle yet intriguing: asset restructuring, adjustments to trusts, and shifts in ownership records. All technically legal on paper.
We can do something called familial searching, and that is to look for a relative that's in prison or that's been through the prison system of whoever is on the...
But once again, everything comes back to timing. And as speculation continues to spread, the public reaction has split sharply in two. One side believes the family is being unfairly dissected during what should be a moment of grief. The other argues that scrutiny is exactly what transparency demands. That divide is powerful and dangerous, because when audiences fracture like this, controversy travels faster than verified facts ever can. Even political figures have begun stepping carefully into the conversation. Carefully worded statements about protecting the integrity of investigations and maintaining trust in federal institutions have appeared, none of them naming the case outright, yet everyone understands what they're referring to. And if this expands further, if formal hearings are launched, if financial reviews intensify, if digital tracking uncovers something undeniable, the situation could shift from a media frenzy into something much larger, a full-scale institutional examination. For now, no charges have been filed.
Let's talk about the cell phone towers. I know it casts a wide net, but how can they pinpoint a bad guy in this case?
No official wrongdoing has been announced, but tension like this doesn't grow from verdicts. It grows from anticipation. The FBI remains quiet. The CODIS analysis is still sealed from public view. And that unidentified device? It still has no owner. What began as a devastating disappearance has slowly transformed into something much larger, a collision between media influence, public confidence, and the full weight of an investigation unfolding under a microscope. And the real question is no longer only what happened to Nancy Guthrie. The deeper question now is this: when everything finally comes to light, will this case reveal a single villain or uncover something far more complex beneath the surface? Because one thing is absolutely clear: this story isn't fading away. The pressure around it is only tightening.
You're right, Lawrence. It does cast slightly larger net, and by design that's somewhat helpful, right? Is we want to start more.
So take a moment and look at the bigger picture. An 84-year-old woman vanishes. A family long associated with carefully managing public narratives suddenly finds itself sitting in a tense courtroom. Sealed communications. Financial activity, described as irregular. Layers of uncertainty piling up one after another. Now imagine showing your audience an image, a map covered with cell towers from AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. In the middle of that grid sits an unidentified device. It goes silent, then suddenly flickers back to life. And we're expected to believe the entire situation is simple? That's where this story begins to feel different. Because it's no longer only about Nancy Guthrie. It's about transparency. It's about influence. It's about what happens when the force of media power collides head-on with the federal investigation. And the deeper investigators dig, the more unsettling the questions become.
The general area of Nancy's home. And what's important about this is now you get to see what towers can law enforcement request.
Why introduce new details in court instead of at a press conference? Why stay silent when speculation explodes? Why does every update create more mystery instead of clarity? Now I want to hear from you.
Mommy, if you are hearing this, you are a strong woman.
So what do you think? Is this simply a heartbreaking situation that's being tangled up by intense public pressure? Or are we only looking at the outer layer of something much bigger beneath the surface? Share your theory in the comments, but keep it sharp and grounded in logic. Because this story is unfolding in real time, and history has shown us something again and again. The biggest revelations rarely arrive with loud warnings. They surface quietly, and then suddenly, everything changes at once. If you want updates the moment new information appears, if you want breakdowns that cut through the noise and focus on what actually matters, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because when the next piece of this puzzle drops, you'll want to see it the second it happens.
Trust me,